Good afternoon and welcome to our 2021 Limerick Club Football Championship special, where we look through all the grades and we look in depth at the senior and intermediate and junior and the newly Premier Junior ranked competition. I suppose, Matt, before we get into the games themselves, the football is probably coming in under the radar with the All Ireland final next week, but they're definitely some of the best football competitions in Munster, at least. That there's always great games and great excitement and great games. Really, is all we want and what we usually get in Limerick.
Yeah, it's there's an exciting program for the weekend, but it's a pity that with the whole hype of the All Ireland final, and we wouldn't swap it for 1 minute, but that sort of the football is like it's overshadowed. For definite, like we have the big kickoff this weekend, and that we have the first round of the senior football championship, a full first round, and I know you'll be talking in depth in a few minutes about the different groups. And we have a couple of games in the intermediate championship, and we have a program of games in the new Premier Intermediate or the new Premier Junior, and in also the Junior A Championship. And I suppose, and by the way, Jack, a game took place last night in the Premier Junior Championship, and it saw Castleman edge out Mount Collins by 12 points to 1-8. But if you look over the structure, like there has been a certain amount of tweaking been done with the structure for the last couple of years, and I'm quite impressed, I have to say, by the format that's in place for this year. I think certainly the junior, and whilst it went all county, there certainly was definitely a disparity in between some of the teams at the top and the teams at the bottom, and bringing in this extra layer now, I think goes a good way towards rectifying that, and it'll be very, very interesting to see how it pans out. But I think one would have to be quite happy that most clubs, without exception, practically, will be competing in the championship at their own level, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, and it's important that grade was brought in, and we see it in other counties as well. And we saw we see the Premier Intermediate Championship in hurling, which is probably Limerick's best championship now. It's still in its infancy, only 7 or 8 years old, and it's a brilliant competition. So hopefully the Premier Junior competition can be the same, and we won't have any drubbings, because that's not beneficial for anyone.
There were scores last year, Jack, in fairness, that were frightening. And it wasn't an option for the county board to do nothing. They were quite conscious of it last year, and were focused on rectifying it. And I think they've come up with it. I think they've come up with a good proposal. If I'm honest, I think it's as near as you can get to eliminating those. Now, look, no matter what competition you have on a particular day, you're going to have a one-sided game. But there was such a plethora of them, in particularly in the junior championship last year, that you didn't have to be Einstein to conclude that the competition as structured was not fit for purpose. So I think the upgrading of the few clubs from Junior B to complete a Junior A championship, and the establishment of a Premier Junior Championship, I think has been a very good move.
Yeah, and we'll just wait and see. But it definitely, on paper, looks like a good move. Obviously, a lot of this focus will focus on the senior championship. It's the flagship championship in Limerick. And before we just get into the depths of it, I just put up the odds for this year's championship. And I suppose, somewhat surprisingly, Newcastle West are favoured at 9-4. That means if you put on €9, you get €4 back. You get your €13. Where Adair, last year's champions, are 5-2. Then you have Monleen in third, and they're the only other team that are below 10-1 would say Badlanders 15-2, Casey's the same. Ula 10-1, St. Kieran's and Ballysteen 12, Scalbly 20-1, Napertick 25-1, and then Clahan and Galtigales 50-1 each. So what's your initial look? Obviously, we're not condoning betting or anything like that, but it's a good indicator to where the farm book lies, I suppose.
It does. Like you, Jack, I'm surprised that that they are not favourites. Particularly the way that they played, the way they finished the year last year. Like if I had one disappointment about it there last year, it was that they didn't get an opportunity to benchmark themselves in a Munster Clubs Championship, because I thought they were very well equipped to give it a go. I'm just wondering, what are the odds based on? Are they based on the recent league competition which we had, County Senior League, which was won, by the way, by Mona Lean, defeating Newcastle West in the final?
Mm-hmm.
I saw that final. From what I saw, I think the Mona Lean odds are very generous. I think they should be much shorter. And
have we lost Matt? Just run through it. He's saying there Mona Lean odds 6-1 is probably a bit out there for Mona Lean. Mona Lean obviously have a lot of key players coming through. Got to the quarter final last year where they fell. Just for today's podcast, we'll be going through each of the teams. We'll go through each of the groups. We look forward to this weekend's games. There's obviously a full set of fixtures in the senior championship. There is a few games not being played in the championships below. I know Drum Broadford and Killeen Palace Henry won't play this weekend. St. Patrick's and Mungret was already fixed for a few weeks' time. But I suppose before we get into it, and while we're waiting for Matt to come back there, we had a podcast this morning and went off without a hitch. I don't know what happened in the meantime. He's gone there completely, so he'll be back soon. But just to go through some of the fixtures, this Sunday or Saturday evening, Galbally Newcastle in Kilmallock at 7 o'clock. That is in the senior championship. You have then on Sunday 3 games: St. Kieran's versus Ballysteen in the Bog Garden, Adair versus Ula and Clahan, and Badlanders versus Clahan and Bruff. All those games on Sunday evening at 7 o'clock. Then moving on to the intermediate championship, obviously Drumcollar Broadford versus Kildimo and Mungret versus St. Patrick's won't be played this weekend. The games you have are Gerald Griffins versus Glyn, which is on at Newcastle on Saturday evening at 7 p.m, and St. Senans versus Bruff in Fina at 7 o'clock on Saturday at the same time. Then moving into the Premier Junior Championship, Mount Collins versus Castleman, which Matt rightly mentioned was played last night. Castleman beat Mount Collins by a point. Then you have Croom versus Ballybrown and Croke at 7 o'clock on Saturday. Monaghay versus Capmore in Clarina at 7 o'clock on Sunday. And Father Casey's versus Newcastle West in Tournafulla on Sunday evening. And then into the Junior A Championship, Mungret versus Drumbroadford in Ballingarry at 7 o'clock on Sunday evening. Brewery versus Ballybrick and Bournemore at 7 o'clock on Sunday in Croom. South Liberties versus St. Pat's in Mungret at 7 o'clock on Sunday, August 15th. And Ahan versus Camogue Rovers on Sunday at 7 o'clock. And I think we have Matt, you're back. You were just talking through there, and I'll put it up again. I was just going through the fixtures for the weekend, but you were talking about Mona Lean at 6-1. You probably think they should be a bit shorter.
I do. I was impressed with them. They have a new look side. They defeated Newcastle West pretty convincingly enough now in the league final. But Jack, it comes with the health warning, and it comes with the caveat of league and championship, two totally different competitions. But on the particular evening now, Donald O'Sullivan was out injured. Brian O'Donovan came on as a sub in the second half, made a huge impact, I thought, actually. Got a couple of points and was involved in setting up the goal. Certainly Mona Lean are very much in the hunt, in my view. Now, but having said that, if I were making the odds, and I'm not a betting man, I would certainly have Adair as favourites, because, as I said, they have developed into what is a winning machine. Now, all right, they didn't go through the championship last year unscathed. I suppose they got a bit of a wake up call in the group stages when they lost the Father Cases, but Jack, they're a very, very, very competent side. It's you just very, very hard to argue or dispute with their credentials, and they're playing a lovely brand of football, and very, very, very good to watch. So like they have married a lot of things together and welded a lot of things together, and I would have thought they would have been favourites, Jack, but I don't see very many poor bookies around, so we'll take their insight into it.
Yeah, and I suppose when you look at the odds, like Newcastle West are only a notch above Adair, and it's more indictment to the rest of the teams that Adair and Newcastle are that bit ahead, and they'll obviously come in to the championship as heavy favourites. And we'll go through the groups now, and there's no better place to start the group one that has Ballysteen, obviously. Ballysteen, St. Kieran's, Galtee Gales. A lot of recent history between a couple of these sides. Ballysteen versus Kieran's, obviously, West rivals, probably meet every second year, if not every year. Obviously, Kieran's met Galtee Gales last year in the semi-final in the Gales' first year back up into the senior ranks. So before we get into the game this weekend, which is Ballysteen versus St. Kieran's with Galtee Gales waiting next week, how do you see the makeup of this group after 3 weeks? What's that?
Well, I thought at the start of last year, actually, and I spoke about it with connections from Galtee Gales, that I thought the new format didn't suit them coming up, in that they had to be into the helter-skelter of having to win practically from day one, that they didn't get an opportunity, that the 6-team group suited the team coming up more, in that they had a game or two to find their feet and then drive on. Galtee Gales were not afforded that luxury. And but I thought, as the competition now, St. Kieran's were lucky to get over Galtee Gales, Jack. I think you were there the same day.
Yeah.
They were lucky to come out of it. And of course, the Gales then went on and beat Trum to preserve their status. So, it bears out my thinking on it, that you'd have seen a different Galtee Gales had they have 5 games to get accustomed to senior ranks. But now we have much of the same, and what they're going to be facing is they're going to be facing first round losers. And who they will be. It's a very, very interesting group. You see, it's very, very hard to judge the form of St. Kieran's from year to year. All right, the previous year in 2019, they were beaten semi-finalists by Ula inside in the Gaelic Browns. And last year, then they were winning relegation semi-finalists. But it just isn't as simple as that, because you've had the change of format from where a club were playing 5 games in the group stages to playing 2. So it's not an exact science, but I have noticed prior to that, when all things were equal and then we hadn't this bloody COVID plague, that it was very, very hard. St. Kieran's were one club that was very, very hard to call from year to year. They could have a spectacularly good year where they would be contenders and flirting with winning out, and the next year that they may drop down a bit. I have a sense that, and you won't like me for saying this, Jack, but I have a sense that Kieran's will win this group.
And who's second?
A good question.
So that's probably tying into the game with Ballysteen on Sunday. You think that Kieran's will overcome Ballysteen on Sunday, and then it'll be Ballysteen versus Galtee Gales in the second round?
I should have said maybe that, and we're coming back to it again, that a certain element of my thinking in this has been conditioned by the departure of Danny Neville.
Yeah, which is fair. It's a loss to any team in any club in the country, regardless, whatever rank you are. Like even in county, he's a huge loss to Limerick as well.
Yeah, I would be thinking totally different now if Danny were on board. It would change the dynamic, because I've been impressed with Ballysteen for the last couple of years. They got to the semi-final last year, and it didn't surprise me, because I thought for a couple of years there that their performances on the field were far better than the return they got in terms of victories and in terms of championship points. Um, Look, this is one of those games, St. Kieran's and Ballysteen, where to a certain degree form goes out the window. Um, they're absolutely arch rivals. It's hard to call it from game to game, but I'm calling it for St. Kieran's on Saturday on Sunday evening.
I suppose,
by about 3 points.
Yeah, I suppose I should.
I know,
I
Jack.
should,
You're starting a competition now, so.
Yeah, I suppose I probably should mention that. I said myself and Matt will do a little competition for this year. I don't know if we'll do a separate one for football and hurling, or if we'll just go one big one. It probably depends how it's going. But I just saw it off the ball. I just saw that we'll predict just the senior and intermediate games, because we'll look forward to every game, but it's just too hard to keep track of all the games. We'll pick a team and how much we think they're going to win by. We won't pick exact scores or anything. So there's Matt's example there of St. Kieran's by 3 points. I'm obviously going to disagree with that. If Ballysteen were playing Dublin in the morning, I'd go for ourselves. But that's just when the predictions come in and there's points come in. That's what it is. We'll put it up every week and we'll see how it's going. You're thinking Kieran's for Sunday, and we're probably looking into these games more this week than a general focus. But it just say whoever loses on Sunday will play Galtee Gales. Is it a benefit to have the game and have lost, or be like Galtee Gales to come in with a fresh slate and you've seen the other team?
Yeah, you see, it's coming so close. It's coming so close after the league that I'm not so sure that that it is a great advantage to have a game played, and to have a game played and lose it. The psychological thing about it. It certainly heaps the pressure, because with the first game, going into the first game and lose it, you have, as it were, the second chance, and were you to win the second day out, you would be virtually assured of progressing. But suddenly the room for error is gone, the room for manoeuvre is gone, Jack. If you lose your first game, and it becomes a must-win game, and that takes on a life of its own within teams, and it depends on how mentally prepared your squad is for it, and all that.
Yeah, and I suppose we'll look into the Gales more next week when they're actually out. But how big of a boost? I know it's so long ago; it's over a year now at this stage. But how big of a boost is it for the Gales that they actually beat Broadford, who were the Kingbins for so many years, to not only maintain their status but just get that win?
It was a huge boost for them. It was a huge boost for them. I was there on the day now, and they were worthy winners, and it was a massive boost, because right from the get go, they set their slate, they set out their slate, set out their ambition as being to survive in the senior championship. And they had achieved that, and it was an achievement in itself. I'm not so sure that the mindset, I would imagine, in the Gales has changed this year. That they will be looking for that little bit more, that they will be looking to build on the experience of the first year back up, and drive on and get a championship win, and possibly get into the at least the quarterfinals, which would be measurable progress. But we've said this before, and it's hard to explain it to people. Galtee Gales is drawn from a strictly rural small community, and they have a tradition. No matter what the odds are, at any level, they will fulfill fixtures. And I'll give you an example of it. They have a senior team, very, very small community. The only bit of a village they have is in Kilbehenny, which is on the main Cork-Dublin road, and part of the village is in County Cork. So they're right on the border. But They field a senior and a junior team, and their junior team this year won the South Junior A League. Their second team, on a night in which they tugged out 28 players for their second team. You know, that will tell you how much part of the community and the level of involvement of the community. If you allow for 15, maybe 20 senior players down on top of 28, you're talking of the bones of 50 players drawn from a strictly rural community. I can't stress that enough. Every day the Gaels go out, you know, they're trying to defy the odds and punch above what should be their weight. But they have such a love of football. They have such a great tradition in football. They have such a well-organised club. And they have such dedication to the cause, Jack, that they are where they are. They've won a junior championship. They won an intermediate championship. They went so close to setting the world on fire when they went down to Kerry and nearly beat the Kerry champions in the Munster Junior Championship. And it's the fantastic attitude towards the game up there, and you know they always set the sky as the limit eventually, but you know would be realistic enough and would say right. Last year the narrative was stay in the Senior Football Championship. I would imagine, and I haven't spoken with them recently, that it'll be to get that win under their belt, get into the knockout stages and see where it takes them.
Yeah, and I suppose that all that applies that you've said there to Galtagales applies to Ballyseen and St. Kieran's as well. Real strong or football strongholds. There's probably little else done in those villages. And I'm going to go for a Ballyseen win, and I'm going to go for a 3-point Ballyseen win. You're going for a 3-point St. Kieran's win. But if you were to call it, as you're calling it, the Kieran's are going through, who do you think will join Kieran's in the knockout round?
I'll preview that when it comes, Jack.
All right, so I'll leave you off with that one. You have one pass because you're good enough to give me your prediction for the game on Sunday. So Ballyseen versus
and give you a prediction you didn't like.
Sure, I'm not going to like all of these, especially if it's against my own club. But we'll see. I'll be going against Ballylanders.
Which is taking my life in my own hands.
I'll be going against Ballylanders this week, definitely. Come on, Clon. But moving on into Group 2, and I suppose when Group 1 was a real football kind of traditional football powerhouses, or not even powerhouses, but just strongholds. Into Group 2, then you have Adair, Ula, and the Piershig. Now Ula obviously is partner with Doon. They're all kind of probably hurling clubs, like at one stage or another. But Adair have really taken to this football crack recently. And that's no disrespect to Adair or whatever, but to go from being relegated in 2015, if I'm right, to win intermediate 16, senior 17, senior 18, senior 20. They're not favourites by according to the bookies, but I would certainly have Adair right up there. They play Ula this Sunday night, and obviously the Piershig is the other team in the group. What's your general consensus for this group?
This group, coincidentally, it's a group that contains 3 clubs who you rightly said are also playing in the Senior Hurling Championship. The Piershig, Adair, and Ula Doon, you know. Yeah. So that in itself is only just a little side fact, but it's an important point. From this group, I'm going for Adair, Jack.
Yeah.
I cannot. Adair would have to disimprove an awful lot, you know, and not show up at all if they're not to get out of the group. I have the utmost respect for them and the way they play football. I'm going for Adair. Now, the second place in the competition, on the face of it, it would look like Ula. Now, Ula were beaten in the county final in 2019. They had an absolutely fabulous run. Now, obviously, they're playing on Sunday evening, and they're going to be playing without the three big boys that are involved with Limerick. Richie English, who is a very good footballer, Darragh Donovan, who's an excellent footballer, and Pat Ryan, who was quite accomplished at the big ball as well. So I'm going for Adair to win that game. And I'm going for Adair to win it by about 5 points.
And the same as you there now, Matt. We've agreed on one thing.
Yeah. Good. It's a pity after 2 hours we wouldn't agree on something, Jack, isn't it?
And as you're making that point there now, it's hard to cut across you, but you've mentioned Ula obviously missing 3 players or playing with Limerick. I know time constraints and all that, but is it a bit unfair on Ula that they're having to go without 3 of their players? Now, maybe the boys have said we're not playing football at all this year, but like, is there something that could have been done, do you think?
I think it's disappointing, that they at least didn't have the option. I don't know. Maybe they had the option. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I have great respect for the tradition of Ula. Ula are one of the great traditions out over there on the Tipperary border, and they've stuck with football, and like they came so close. Like they were promoted at the end of 2015, Jack, as county champions, intermediate champions, and they had they had a couple of rough years when they were adjusting to senior championship, but now they're firmly ensconced in the senior championship. And like they had an absolutely brilliant run in 2019. It was a dream run from them. Now it didn't work out as well last year. They were eventually beaten they came out of the group all right, but they were eventually beaten in the quarterfinal by Galway, which was maybe a minor shock. And I think they probably are strong enough to come out of the group, possibly in second place to Adair. But Jack, beware of the third team in this group.
Mm-hmm.
When these boys put their mind to football, they can be practically equally as deadly as they are when they're in hurling.
Yeah.
Now if they play a lovely brand of football, which they never seem to abandon. Whether it's winning or losing, they play very, very attractive football, very easy football to watch in the eye now. I love them watching them play football, because they seem to have the same philosophy about playing football as they have about playing hurling. Now, I don't think that they're good enough, from what I saw them last year, to beat Adair or to beat Ula. But then again, these are one of the imponderables, and I spoke about St. Kieran's being one of those. Na Piarsaigh might very well be another one of them. I wouldn't write them off entirely. If they get it right, if they get as many players that's available to them on board, it certainly won't be for the want of putting on a good show. But at this remove, looking at it, I think for me it's Adair and Ula coming out of that group.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Adair don't really seem to take anyone for granted. I know last year they were beaten by Casey's, but I think it was more from Casey's than anything. But they just seem to be determined to win all their games, whatever means necessary. And then Ula and Piarsaigh
you see, they responded in the perfect way, and if anything, the defeat by Casey's was a wake-up call, which managers sometimes like their players to get in case complacency would be setting in or any of that sort of thing. But certainly there was no question, Jack, about their credentials. And what I saw of there in the concluding stages of the championship, the one real downer for me was that they didn't get an opportunity to play in the club championships.
Yeah, and I can't see anything but an Adair win this weekend. Now I said 5 points. I go for 6 points just to be that different to you.
Just to be awkward, Jack.
Yeah, of course. But I wouldn't be surprised that Ula put it up to him. But I think Ula and Piarsaigh, if they could get all their players, and it's a big if, and it's probably not going to happen, they will be real challengers for the championship as a whole. But as it stands,
You're absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. Couldn't agree more with you. If for instance the day would come that Na Piarsaigh would put out everybody, put out the best 15 footballers in that club. Everybody watch out. You'd be talking about, we all know how to what level Willem would know who can play football for starters.
Yeah, I'd harpen back to 2016. The Pierce had just won the All-Ireland in the hurling, and they were knocked out of the club championship then very early, and they put all their eggs into the football basket, and they got the semi-final, and they were very close to getting the final. So if they can get their house in order and get everyone playing, which is the biggest for like Peter Casey and William Dunne, who are playing week in, week out in the grandest stage of them all, like you can't begrudge them.
David Dempsey is a very, very good footballer.
Yeah, even Alan Dempsey. There's so many. All of them players are athletes, but it's looking like Adair Ula will advance, and it'll be another disappointing year for the Pierce. But look, we'll know more after this weekend. Moving into Group 3, Ballylanders, of course, you will definitely go for Ballylanders, Claughaun, and Monaleen. I suppose Ballylanders last year, there are two teams coming from different finals last year. Ballylanders lost heavily to Adair. I think anyone would have lost Adair on that side. But Claughaun, after a long time in the wilderness, are back in the senior ranks. They beat our Griffins, and they'll be full of confidence coming into this game.
They will be full of confidence, and they will rightly be confident, Jack, because it isn't as if they came from nowhere to win the intermediate championship. They've been knocking on the door for a couple of years, so that Claughaun would be a very, very, very solid outfit now. And of course, for Claughaun, it's coming back home. It's welcome back to the big time for Claughaun, like the fallen giants of Limerick football and hurling, if you like. But it was fantastic to see that they made the comeback last year, and that things are up on the club there. And I certainly Ballylanders, I think, will be the last people that will be taking Claughaun for granted, and they will take Claughaun for granted at their peril now. Because and Claughaun, both of these clubs are coming from county final appearances last year. Ballylanders a defeat in the county final, and the big question is how will they put that behind them? And Claughaun coming after winning a county final, full of momentum. Now Ballylanders competed in the South Senior Football Championship and won it out there a couple of weeks ago, and they defeated Ula in the final. So that will be a boost for them. But last year, Niall Fitzgerald, the former Tipperary footballer, who is the manager of Ballylanders and coached them, he took a huge leap of faith, and we spoke about it last year. In that he blooded 3 or 4 young fellas, put them in, left them in. And particularly there were 3 of them in defence: cornerback, centre back, and wing back, which was a big ask for young lads. And they repaid the faith by getting to the county final at least. So at least he's going to have these new players with a year's experience behind them now, and they will have gained considerably from that. Now, Claughaun will be a very, very seasoned team, and I'm going for Bally to win it by about 2 points.
2. A cautious vote from the Ballylanders, man. I will agree with you. I just think experience tells a lot in senior football. I think scores are very hard to come by. Ballylanders, I don't know if there's anyone better at winning those hard scores, the likes of Jimmy Barry Murphy and Danny Froon inside there. I went for a 4-point win for Ballylanders, but I think waiting in the long grass is the team that are going to win this group in Monaleen. I think they've kind of been flirting with hitting that next level, and you mentioned it beforehand with their price. I think it's time for Monaleen to re-announce themselves as one of the superpowers in Limerick football.
Yeah, I think it is, and would you believe I agree with you? You'll probably be surprised, but I agree with you with the caveat that Ballylanders have a fantastic record against Monaleen. So, but on the face of it, looking at it at this stage, they look poised to be the team to beat in the group, the likely team to top the group, and like they had a very very good win in the league and came through the City League unbeaten, and then when they got into the meaty business into the league, they didn't get it easy, and they had back-to-back wins in the semi-final over Father Casey's and in the final over Newcastle West, and like that's not very very long ago, so they won't have much problem in taking that kind of form into the championship. So, and as I said to you earlier in an earlier podcast about there being without Donald O'Sullivan on the night, like the influence he brings from not just as a goalkeeper, but as a leader on the field, and his kick out and all that sort of thing, and Brian O'Donovan, like they look to me, and there are a number of new players coming through in Monaleen, and there seems to be a conveyor belt in Monaleen now at the moment, that are churning out these new players coming through, and we can see them coming through the county minor and county under 21. Like an absolutely excellent Monaleen player in Dara Murray the other night. With a huge game at midfield for Limerick. Absolutely huge game. Apart from scoring 8 points and kick 7 frees out of that, but he was hugely influential in the play, and there was a young lad, Stephen Kiley, there playing, and a young lad inside corner forward, Conal O'Duneen. They have players coming through now. I know these players are not eligible, but they are just the type of players that they have been producing over the years, and now they're making the transition to the senior side. So, yeah, I think waiting on the long grass for the two protagonists on Friday evening, on Sunday evening, will be Monaleen in the subsequent rounds. I'm going for Monaleen and Bally to come out of the group.
Yeah, and just a word on Clahan. Like, obviously, Clahan will be with 2 games, anything can happen. But for them, this year will be all about like maintaining their status, and then hopefully next year they'll have 5 games in the group stage.
Yes, absolutely, and what we said at the outset about Galtee Gales and about how the system didn't suit him, to a certain degree, the same applies to Clahan this year. Obviously, I've no doubt that Clahan would much prefer if they had 5 games, get the game or two to feel your way. Well and good if you got a win, better still. But and that you find your feet in the senior championship, and you have 5 games to do it with this truncated version. Like it's fire and brimstone from day one, Jack.
Yeah, it's definitely fire and brimstone from day one. And I suppose moving in our final group, it's Galbally, Newcastle West, and Father Casey's. It'll be Galbally and Newcastle on Saturday evening, the only senior championship game on Saturday evening. Obviously, Newcastle are heavy favourites for this game. They're the favourites for the championship. We've said we probably will edge towards Adair, but again, it's probably Newcastle 1 and then either Galbally or Casey's for that second spot.
Yeah, it's hard to say beyond Newcastle West. No, I was disappointed, I have to say, with Newcastle West in the league final, but speaking with connections with the team, they were saying to me that they hadn't done as much in advance as they would have liked to, and I take all that because when I look at the team sheet, I would say that that they should have performed much better, and I have no doubt that they will perform much better. Now, Galbally can always put it up to Newcastle West. It's one of those clashes like Ballysteen and Newcastle West. They're not in awe of Newcastle West. Galbally are not in awe of anybody for that matter, Jack. But Galbally certainly have improved. And we flagged it from the very, very start last year, if you recall, that we felt at the start of the championship, the very outset, if you go back to the podcast, where we said that the underachievers in 2019 were Galway.
Hmm.
So they proved us right in that they went all the way to the semi-final where they were beaten by Adair and gave Adair plenty of it. So, Jerome Stack is in charge there. He will have the inside track on Newcastle West from his time there. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm going for Newcastle West by 3 points. Cautiously.
I'll go one more than that. I'm going for Newcastle by 4. But again, I think in the long grass, I don't think Father Casey will beat Newcastle. But I think they'll put it up to Newcastle, and I think they will beat Galway. I think it will be Newcastle and Father Casey coming through. And that's leaving a very strong team in Galway into the relegation semi-finals. It just goes to show this is probably, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you on the final configuration there, Jack. I think Father Casey's.
Yeah.
I think Father Casey's probably will edge Galway out, but it will be a very, very strong. It will be a very, very strong Galway team that will. I would have no worries for Galway. I would have no worries for Galway maintaining their senior status. But Jack, if there's one club that can defy the odds and upset our predictions as to how the various groups will pan out, it's Galway.
Yeah.
Galway could very conceivably win one of those games. Like they've an awful lot of young players coming through, and they've won county under 21. They've won county minors. They've been beaten in county minor finals, and they have a good record of transitioning those players into the senior side. On the face of it, it looks cut and dry. It looks that it's Newcastle West and Father Casey's. Of all the 4 groups, if the prediction was to be upscuttled, I think Galway could be the ones to do it.
Yeah, well, when your predictions, you're still having a prediction for Group 1, but I said I'd leave you off at that. But it does seem to be Group 4 is that so-called group of death. We'll just go like that's just this weekend. Obviously, next week we'll have more. I think there's games going to be played on the weekend All Ireland. Whether that is changed remains to be seen. But for Ballysteen Kieran's, you have a Kieran's 3-point win, and I have a Ballysteen 3-point win. That is the only major discrepancy in the prediction so far. Adair Ula, you said Adair by 5. I said Adair by 6 to be awkward. Ballylanders Clahan, you gave Ballylanders a very cautious vote with 2 points. I gave them a 4-point win. I just think they're that bit ahead of Clahan at this stage. And then Newcastle, I said Newcastle by 4. You said Newcastle by 3. We'll go by correct result is 1 point, but the correct score or winning margin will be 3 points, and we'll see. There might be an out prize at the end of it or something, or I might do a giveaway. But that is the senior championship. But I'm like, you know yourself, Matt. This time next week, it'll be completely different.
It will, and we you and I may have egg on our faces.
Well, I don't think one of us. I don't think we may. I think one of us will, and one of us probably will be let off a small bit.
Which I suppose, if we're honest, when it comes to predicting the line out of teams, we're well used to receiving that material in our face.
Yeah, I won't even go into even trying to decipher who's going to be starting for any given team this weekend. But that is the senior championship. I suppose we'll spend a bit of time on the other championships as well. But the senior one is obviously the pinnacle. But unfortunately, in intermediate, there's 2 games falling foul of the weekend. Drumbraford and Kildare Palace Kennedy, as I said, won't be played this weekend. Either with St. Pat's and Mungret. The St. Pat's and Mungret game is down for the 26th. I don't know if there's a date on the Drum KP game, but just on that first group, Drum, Kildare Palace Kennedy, Crocora, how would you see the configuration of that one at the end of the year?
It's a very interesting group now, this one. I was looking at it during the week. It's an interesting group, Jack, in so far as here you have the team of the 3rd millennium, the team of the 21st century, Drumcolor Bradford, beginning life in Limerick football 2nd tier. If you were told about it 5 years ago, you'd be nearly arrested. That such could happen, but happen it has. And here you have also in the group, you have Cricora, Manister, who actually, Jack, came under the radar and to a certain degree came from nowhere to win the Junior A Championship last year and won it in style. And in there with him, you have Kildimo Palace Kenry. Now, Kildimo Palace Kenry, I think, could be about their third or fourth year at this level.
Yeah.
But Kildimo Palace Kenry are a club that are trying to juggle with hurling and football. And it's going to be a bigger challenge for Kildimo Palace Kenry this year, trying to juggle the two codes, in that it will be Kildimo Palace Kenry's first year at senior level in hurling. And they will obviously want to make an impact, and they like we said about promoted teams. It's all about preserving senior status and preserving status, your promoted status when you get it. So, is the football going to suffer there?
Eventually.
Possibly. If you ask me who will win this group, I probably have to say Bradford.
Yeah, I'd go with you. We were there in Raquel last year when they played Newcastle, and it just seemed to have a few lads coming through. Brian O'Hearn is one I think he could be gone for the championship. I don't know if he's around, but even James Mullinone and Killian Fahey and things, I think just have that firepower to get through. But it's one for Cora after coming up is one they can definitely target.
Yeah, I suppose. I'll happen it, and I've said it before. It was a very, very sad day, and the day they were relegated. I was very, very, very sad to see it happening that day in Kilmallock, and of course they took it in a manner like which what you'd expect from Bradford. Like they took it with the same dignity that they and behaved in the same dignified manner in which they did in all those great days they've had since the turn of the millennium. I have no doubt. I have no doubt that the will is there to bounce back quickly. Garrett Noonan's experience will be badly needed. The twin Noonans, their experience will be badly needed. As you said, the young players coming through. Derry McCarthy, who can be a match winner on his day. As I said, for me, it was a sad day to see him going down, and I'm going for them that they'll win the group and take the first step on the way to getting back to senior. Down the road in the Intermediate Championship, I think there are going to be huge obstacles for them. But Drum's first instinct at the moment will be to consolidate, arrest the slide, and if possible, come out of the group and begin the return back.
Yeah, I'd go along with that, but I will say, and I'll leave it at this, with Kildimo Palace Kenry, they're not quite in the Pearse League, but they're a team that if they could get all their hurlers playing football, they would give this a right rattle and could even win it. But that remains to be seen. That could be the case. But as you mentioned, juggling senior after waiting so long to get to senior, I think obviously the hurling in that club is going to take priority this year. But the likes of Peter Nash and Tony McCarthy could nearly drive a team by themselves. And as you said, Cricora have the momentum, so it could be anyone's game. Group 2, then, I think, is the toughest group that was drawn out from maybe the Caseys, Newcastle and Galway group aside. St. Patrick's, Mungret and Raquel, like 3 teams that are harbouring genuine hopes of promotion and have been knocking the door for the last, like, Pats were seniors recently as 18, Raquel 17, and Mungret have been in 4 semi-finals in a row, I want to say, or maybe 4 the last 5 years. Like, there's no game this weekend, but like, this is a key group here.
It is. It's a very hard group, a very, very hard group to call. And as you say, all 3 have genuine, claims, to come out of the group. Rathkeale, I saw Rathkeale in the 2013 county intermediate final on a day in which they put on what I regarded as one of the finest displays of football that I have seen for many a long day and have seen since, actually, on that day. And they subsequently went up senior, really didn't cut it at senior. I actually, having admired the quality of their play at intermediate level, I wasn't so sure that they were equipped at that stage. It maybe came too soon for them to go up senior. I thought they lacked a bit of physicality that would be needed in senior. They struggled in senior and have subsequently gone back down, and have been beaten in the county final since by Galbally, and are there or thereabouts. I fancy Rathkeale, Jack, to upset the city odds in this one. I fancy Rathkeale to come out of the group. I can't make up my mind whether first or second, but I can see Mungret, very, very good side until the concluding stages of the championship. Very, very unlucky that they haven't got to play in a county final like 2019. The Gales needed was it a replay or extra time to beat them?
Extra time and a replay in the final then.
Yeah, and a replay in the final, yeah. And now, St. Pat's, dogged side, not too long ago since they were senior. I'm going for Mungret and Rathkeale to come out of the group.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. I think Mungret, their focus is probably going to be on hurling after losing the final last year to Kildimo. But I think they've been thereabouts knocking doors for a long time. But I think in this group you have the Garrod Hegarty factor, who on his day is as good as any footballer in the county. Obviously, he's going to spend most of the time playing hurling, but I would agree with you that I think Mungret and Rathkeale in that order will be the two coming through, but we won't see this group for a while yet, so we won't have to make predictions. Now, the first prediction I'm going to make you make in the Intermediate Championship is Gerald Griffins versus Glyn. Pallasgreen then are waiting next week, but Gerald Griffins have lost successive finals now. It's not a case of now or never, but like it's definitely going to enter their mind that they need to get out of this grade as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you'd have to say that they're entitled to think at this stage that now is the hour or day has come. But you know, they're not contesting the finals by accident, Jack. They have a decent side, a very decent side, and they have a very generous sprinkling of county players.
Yeah,
which is hugely important. And you look at Jim Liston, you look at Tommy Griffin, you look at Colin McSweeney, you look at Jared Stack, isn't it?
Yeah, and Darren Noonan. There's
five, Darren Noonan, yeah. So like that's a huge nucleus to have on any team, you know. I think I've Griffins down to win this group.
Yeah, I'd be thinking that way, and I think they will win well as well. I don't think it'll be as close as other groups you've talked about. And that's no disrespect to Glyn or Pallasgreen. I just think that Gerald Griffins are that next level up.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going for them to beat Glyn by about 7 or 8 points.
I have 7 down, so you can take the 8 this time. You can go the higher spread.
Right.
And then between Glyn in that reckoning and both of our reckonings, it'll be Glyn and Pallasgreen next week. Now, us saying it is like a curse, but just say it goes like that. Glyn or Pallasgreen then becomes a must-win battle, essentially. Winner takes all.
It does. And Pallasgreen are dogged battlers. They're dogged championship battlers. And it's not too long ago since Pallasgreen won a county under 21A football championship, 2019, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it was Colin Ryan's last year at under 21 anyway, whenever that was. Maybe it was 2018. 2018, actually.
Oh yes, sorry, they beat us in
Yeah,
minor. Palace Green beat
yeah,
us in a minor final in McNeville. That was 2014, I think. Don't bring it
yeah,
up.
yeah. And Brian Fanning was playing as well in
Yeah.
that team. So like they have a strong side. You see, Glen have been up there now for the last 5 or 6 years, and they basically, apart from one year when they got to the quarterfinals, they've struggled to make an impact.
Mm.
And there should be a great tradition of football in Glen going all the way back 100 years. But like they were one of the giants of Limerick football in the 20s. Didn't they win 4 or 5 county titles in a row? Was it senior titles? But
Yeah.
that counts for very very little in 2021. I think it's going to be difficult for Glen to come out of the group. I'm going for Gerald Griffins to win the group, and I'm going for Palace Green to also advance to the knockout stages.
Yeah, it'll be Palace Green and Jar Griffins, but I think Jar Griffins will probably be the standard bearers coming from the group stages. I'm going to go for 7. You're going to go for 8, probably against your will of Smallville, but that's the way these things go. I had my 7
It's a
written down
pity that
first.
it's a pity that isn't halves, Jack, and we could go 7.5.
I'll give you the 7 if you want, but
No, I
I think
won't argue with you.
that's great. It'll probably work in your favor. And then
You're
lastly, you have
you're cranky and tired today, so I won't.
I've been talking to you now for well over 2.5 hours at this stage. So, but anyways, that's not for the people. That's not the people's fault. If they've managed to listen this far, then fair play to them. But the final intermediate group, then, and the final game we'll probably look in depth at is St. Senans versus Bruff, and then Monaleen will be awaiting the losers next weekend. I suppose for Senans, really, like the talent is there. They've often have a few sprinkled through intercounty grades, going from 16s, minors, 20s up to the senior ranks with James Loughlin there at the moment. But they just haven't kicked on since they got relegated in, was it 2018 they got relegated, or 2019 they got relegated. Like, and if I was Bruff, I would be definitely thinking that confidence probably won't be that high in St. Senans that the game is ever taken. Now I do fancy St. Senans to win, but I wouldn't say it's as straightforward as other games we looked at.
Yeah, I fancy St. Senans to win. Before you say it, now I expect them to win by 5 points.
I have them down as 4, but as I kind of talked myself out of, I'll stay with the 4.
Bruff haven't been going as well as they should have been. It's only 2 or 3 years ago they survived when they beat Castleman in a relegation playoff. They certainly haven't set the world on fire, but like that said, there are an awful lot of very very good footballers in Bruff, and it's a question of can they mobilise them. They will be dicing with and juggling with genuine ambitions of winning the Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship as well, which is which is something that you must take into account. I think if you ask me, first of all, I think St. Senans are going to win the game, as I said, and I think Bruff will come out of the group.
Yeah.
Because it's Monaleen's second side, who only survived through the relegation playoffs last year. So, full credit to Monaleen to be able to field a senior and an intermediate team.
Yeah.
I'm going for Senans at the weekend. I'm going for Senans and Bruff to come through in the group.
Yeah, I think just on Monaleen there for a second, I think, and as we predict that their senior team will probably hit a new level this year, it will definitely take from that intermediate team, because you're going to need a squad of 20 to 25 players to compete in the highest level of the senior championship, and that will obviously take away some of the best from the intermediate team. And it's a great credit to Monaleen, if they can maintain that, that'll be a successful year for them.
It's absolutely fantastic, but it could work both ways, Jack. In that the intermediate team would be robbed to a certain degree of maybe the top players, but they may displace some very very experienced heads at senior level who would be dropping down to intermediate, and who would have a huge contribution to make at that level. So, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But I honestly think that at this remove, it looks like Sinnons and Bruff to come out of the group.
I'd go along with that. We've been fairly in agreement so far, bar Palestine Kieran's aside. But just looking at the overall picture of them two championships before we go into the lower ones, like who do you see who will be standing tall at the end in both the senior and intermediate championships? Do you think if you were just had to put one team on it?
I'd go for Adair in the senior.
Adair and their biggest challenger probably Newcastle, is it?
Newcastle West and Monaleen.
Yeah, as the bookies went, I would say Ballysteen to win it, but if not, it's hard to choose between Adair and Newcastle. I think generally those sides, whoever wins the meeting of those sides wins it out. They don't obviously meet in the early stages very often because they're usually in semi-finals. I think Newcastle, if they can get their best 15 on the field, they probably have more on the bench then as well. But Adair know how to win. It's a difficult one to see. In the intermediate championship, I saw Jar Griffins play up close recently, missing a good few players and still a quality side. I would fancy Jar Griffins to make it 3 times the charm.
Yeah, I fancy him. I think that the strongest challenges to him would likely come from Mungret, St. Sinnons, or Dark Horses Rathkeil.
Yeah, but as we've seen in the intermediate championship in recent years, it's anyone's game really once it gets going, and a team can come from like Clagham knocking on the door for a while, and so are Galtee Gales got back-to-back promotions. But like you don't know who's going to win the intermediate championship, and there is a chance for Jar Griffins, who would be heavily favoured, that like they fall at one of those final hurdles again. But cautious votes to Adair / Newcastle and Jar Griffins. Moving into the lower ranks of it and the new Premier Junior A Football Championship, I'll just go through the groups there, and you can give your thoughts on who you think will be maybe the last 2 or 3 teams that are standing. In Group 1, Mount Collins, Castleman, Kappa. Group 2, Croom, Ballybrown, Atay. Group 3, Monaghay, Capmore, Kilteely, Drumkeen. And Group 4, Newcastle and Father Casey's, as they are in the senior, and Hospital Herbertstown. What's the immediate standout for you there, Matt, team-wise?
Oh, what to call it? Croom. Croom would be one of them.
Yeah, Croom are in a group with Atay, and I thought
and Atay. That's that. They would be the. Just call the groups again, Jack. I don't have the benefit of having him up in front of me. And we go group by group.
Here, 2 seconds. I will take a screen grab of it, and we can look at it together. 2 seconds now, Matt. Technology is great, lads. When it gets going, it's so usually against us, Matt. But I think I've figured it somewhat. I think I have it here now. Just got from our Instagram.
The Gremlins are on John Road today, anyway.
Yeah, a small bit. It's a bit blurry, but you can see that there, Matt, can't you?
Yeah, I can see it. I would see Castleman in Group 1 as being, plus the fact now that we have the benefit that they beat Mount Collins last night. So I would see them coming out of that group, possibly with Mount Collins.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting Group 2 now. Ballybrown tend to punch above their weight at football. And, of course, they had that famous victory a couple of years ago when they won the Munster Junior B out in Knockaderry after winning the Limerick Championship. I'm going for Croom and Atay to come out there, Jack.
Yeah, I think Atay are my team to pick from the whole competition. I think they kind of got caught in the hop last year. Their first 2 games, they score something like 740 or something in the first 2 games. But carry on.
I'm going on to Group 3, which is very, very interesting as well. You have Monaghay, who've been dicing there with it. You have Capamore, who are not long down from intermediate. And you have Kilteely Drumkeen, who've been knocking at the door for a very, very long time. I'm going for Kilteely Drumkeen to come out of this group anyway. With who, Jack?
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. I'll let you pick because
I'm going Monaghay, I think.
Monaghay, last year's finalist, obviously.
Yeah.
And then you've 2 second sides in Group 4 in Hospital Herbertstown.
Do you know something? The 2 second sides could come through here.
Yeah, but they're like they've huge picks as well, and they're real.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I will say for Newcastle is that they have the Premier Intermediate hurling this year, which will take up a lot more of the time than the intermediate. No disrespect to the intermediate, but that's just the way that hurling going. Could you see that being a case of concern for Newcastle?
It could be, but they have such a depth of talent and such numbers. Now, I think Hospital Halberstone presently are struggling for numbers at this level. They had a championship last year that to forget. Um, and I'm sticking that I think the two Westerners will come out of it.
And there's your eight to go through. Who would be the last one left? Would you imagine if you were to gaze into the crystal ball now?
I have a fancy for Croom.
Yeah, you mentioned Chrome. I'm going to go with a team in their group. I'm going to go with a Tay. No one else, Brown will probably come out of that group and throw a spanner in the works, but we'll see. And I don't doubt Brown have the capabilities of doing that. And then obviously moving into the junior championship at the end. And look, you'd like to go through all these groups in great depth, but there just isn't enough time to be going through these. And we'll be speaking about them at length as the championship goes on. But in Group 1, you've Drumbrollar Broadford's second team, Mungret St. Paul's second team, and Bannog. Brewery, Ballybrick and Bormore, and the Piershick second side, South Liberties, St. Pat's second side, and Feeney Kilmeady, and then you've Ahan, Camogue Rovers, and Adair's second side. There's a few derbies in there, a few really interesting games, just even if you picked out your top team for each of the groups or the top two.
I'll go Bannog and Mungret St. Paul's.
Near neighbours.
Ballybrick and Bormore and Brewery, Feeney Kilmeady and Liberties. No though.
Yeah.
Ahan, Camogue Rovers.
Camogue. I'd actually have an outside, not an actual bet, but an outside bet on Adair. I just think the way we see Father Casey's and the Castle and even Monaleen again with their second teams a bit higher, I think having seen Adair up close and personal and seen the personnel they can bring to games, they won the minor A recently as well. Like they're building that.
Yeah, they did, and they won the West. They beat Feeney Kilmeady in the West A Football League final, didn't they?
Yeah, so I would actually.
Yeah, no, I'll change to Ahan there.
I'm surprised that you're agreeing with me, and I'd actually go as far as say that if I was to pick one team from it, I think like momentum is a brilliant thing, and momentum within a club. If you can harbour it, I would say Adair would be my dark horses to win it out.
Yeah, I would see Ballybrick and Bormore maybe. No excuse for Brewery now, because they have some very, very good footballers in Brewery, but hurling takes precedent there,
Yeah.
And if they put their mind to it, it's not too long ago since they contested a Munster clubs final in football,
Yeah.
Junior 8 clubs final about 10 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of strong teams in there, Matt, and like it could be a case of this weekend. If you get ahead of a team in the first weekend, or even if you're out in the second weekend, then you can go straight into 2 games. Like you don't know how this rolls, but it promised to be a great championship. And look, we've looked at them games in depth. We'll be looking at all these games in depth. We have our predictions to keep us honest, to see who the better marksman is, the better bookkeeper, I suppose. But I think we'll leave it there, Matt. We have an hour and 8 on the clock. We did a podcast a while ago as well that went over an hour as well. It's been a long old morning, but a very enjoyable one with you, Matt. This is obviously being recorded, so it won't be live. But do feel to leave comments in below, and myself and Matt will be able to see him, or someone will be able to see him and keep the conversation going. But I'll have an article up on the website with all the fixtures. Matt is a great source during the weekends on his Twitter and his Facebook. He always updating fixtures, results, etc. So very thanks to you, Matt, for talking to me,
for
doing
Jack.
this. It's a pleasure. We have a great championship in store. It's a week out from our final, but it's football that's taken the preference this weekend. Hopefully we'll get a Ballysteen win on Sunday, just for a personal point of view. And I suppose if if I want Ballyseen to win, I suppose I'll have to give Ballylanders a shout out
You
for our
have
match
to, yeah.
for Matt. But many thanks to everyone for getting for watching whenever you do watch, and I hope it's an enjoyable weekend. And best of luck to all teams. I hope everyone gets to play their games. We've had so many COVID cases, etc. over the last year. Let's just get back to doing what we do best, going out into the field, enjoying the games. Best of luck to all the referees and everything. We can't do this without. And hopefully it's an enjoyable weekend, Matt. And we'll be talking about all that happened